Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. It is exactly 12:29, our final interview of the day right here on the Mid-Morning Talk Show with me, Julie Ali. Now, all I can say is yippee. It's a public holiday tomorrow. But is it just all about bright place and sunshine? I think not. I think we as a Muslim community have a huge role to play regarding who we are, what we are, and also very especially about Dawa, inshallah. So, we're going to be talking with Professor Muhammed Haron regarding Heritage Day, and that we shouldn't be sitting back and letting other communities take the lead in promoting cultural activities, etc. We have a huge role to play to create awareness of who we are, what we can achieve. And I think it's time we started doing that. So, Assalamu alaikum to you, Professor Muhammad Haroon. Welcome to the
Walaikum salam.
program.
Walaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, what should Muslim Heritage Day represent for the broader South African society today, especially in the context of our very diverse cultural landscape?
Oh, that's a bit of a loaded question, Julie, because we can't afford just to share thoughts in a few minutes. But considering the time frame that we have, I think there's no question that we have such a rich heritage that we can touch upon almost anything and everything, if I may sort of describe it in that way. And the reason for that is that when we look back historically at the Cape Muslims specifically, and of course, we're talking about the Durban Muslims as well, where the ports of entry were for those who were either indentured laborers or who came as free slaves or free passengers, and of course, as slaves. So historically, I think nobody can overlook the fact. Of course, the apartheid regime and colonialists wanted to marginalize our Muslim communities for whatever reason. But of course, we know from what we have been able to latch on, there are a number of sort of heritage issues, if I may describe it like that. One is, if we come to the Cape, what did we find? We found our early Muslim communities having written the Afrikaans language in the Arabic script, and that, of course, resulted in what has been described Arabic Afrikaans manuscripts. That in itself had contributed in a very enormous linguistic manner to the Afrikaans language evolution. But of course, the Afrikaner scholarship specifically wanted to ignore that, not until persons like Ahmad Davids, whom we also should celebrate as a contributor towards heritage consciousness, in the sense that he basically was a social worker, was a social historian, and delved into early Cape Muslim history and helped, of course, alongside others who have written on the subject. But he went further by giving us an overview of the Mosque of the Bukab, for example. He then subsequently delved into Arabic Afrikaans, and as a result of that, Hein Willemse and Suleiman Dango edited his thesis that was produced in 1991, which should have been awarded a PhD. But I'm sort of just harping on this partly because we seem to ignore the fact that Muslim contribution has been fairly rich in that sector, that is, in the linguistic sector. Look at the other cultural aspects in cuisine. I mean, who can ignore the contributions in this sector? If we go to Durban, we think of our lady, if I describe her as Lady Zulekha Mayat, whose contribution has been enormous, and yet they are not acknowledged the way they should. We think of Cape, the Cape Malay cookery books. All of these clearly indicate that there has been a history in this sector. Then we can move on to the building sector and look at the artisanship, that is the carpentry, the plumbing, the building sector, early buildings have all been as a result of their contribution, and yet they're not fully acknowledged. They as if they were invisible, and in fact, as if they remain invisible. So I'm
Mm,
just mentioning these partly because to tell our current generation and those still to come to basically say that we have a rich heritage that we need to draw inspiration from. On top of all of that, of course, we talk about the individuals who contributed towards our identity as a Muslim community. You'd think of Sheikh Yusuf, you think of Abu Bakr Effendi at the Cape. Then you think of other Maulanas and Shuyukh, earlier individuals who really made a mark, but whose presence, so to speak, in our community seemed to have been marginalized by our own selves, not by others, but
absolutely.
even by our own selves. And so they need to be brought back into our lives, so to speak, through writings, through different sort of work as a way of expressing, first of all, our acknowledgement that they contributed towards who we are today. At the same time, we need to feel proud that they have helped us to find pathways to be part of this demographic or this rainbow nation that we are in. And so this is where we are. I think there's no question that we need to really celebrate the heritage that we have.
Okay, I want to bring two issues to the fore in this discussion. Dr. Faisal Suleiman from SAMNET, based in Durban, he has this amazing vision and mission every year for the past so many years on Heritage Day. He promotes the open mosque concept where they invite, or we, or whichever community promotes the open mosque day, opens the mosques to non-Muslims and allow
Mhm,
them to come in to see what a mosque is all about, and to share some of our our foods
mhm,
with them, into for them to understand what the salah is, the significance of the
mhm,
salah being one of the five pillars of Islam. So it's really twofold. It's about our heritage, but it's also an opportunity to promote our religion, thereby being involved in
mhm,
dawah. And I'm just hoping more and more masajids throughout the country
mhm,
start taking the lead and, going this route. But then when we dive into history,
mhm,
undoubtedly you've mentioned one or two historical figures within our community. But let's look at Tuan Guru, who's
mhm,
often referred to as a spiritual Islam in South
mhm,
Africa. How should we understand his legacy today, in today's social political climate, and
mhm,
lest our future generations forget the impact that he has made on the
mhm,
South African, not only Muslim community, but South Africa as a whole?
mhm,
How do we just keep the spirit of those
mhm.
giants giants of personalities alive and ongoing in our
Mhm.
lives?
Well, again, yeah, I suppose if we need to share and unpack Tuan Guru's contribution, once again, it will take us quite a while just to do so for several reasons. One of it, he has been one who basically has been responsible for the foundational structures of the masjid at the Cape. That's first. Secondly, he had written from memory the Quran, of course, the Mus'haf, as we refer to it as, and that in itself, and of course, copies were made of that. And those two sacred elements, if I can describe it as such. Of course, the Quran, the word of the Almighty, and for him to have memorized and written down, whilst of course he was in on Robben Island. In fact, he was twice on Robben Island, and compared to others who were just there once. If I mean, not I'm describing in a way that just to understand the circumstance which he was, which is also difficult sometimes to imagine during contemporary. But the point which you want to make is that he had used these opportunities when in isolation to really contribute in a substantial way to the writing of the Quran, and of course from memory. So that is what we have as part of our legacy. The second and important part is the issue of the foundation of the masjid. I think That in itself is sort of a identity marker that none of us can ever sort of think of any Muslim community being without. So the masjid, that foundation is there. Alongside that is the foundation of the madrasa. So in other words, all of these institutions and structures, of course, the primary source that we all are inspired by, as well as these two foundational structures known as the masjid and the madrasa, they were all as a result of Tuan Guru's contribution. And up to this very day, all our communities benefit from that institution. So that legacy is so rich, so diverse, so inspirational that it cannot be, we cannot think about the Muslim community without thinking about those. So, having said that, let me just quickly fast track to the contemporary period in terms of what you just mentioned about Faisal Suleiman, sort of, opening up the masjid. Interestingly, related to that, if we think of Ahmad Didat, again, another important figure in our Muslim community whose memory we should also keep alive. Though some of us might disagree with the method of the da'wah, for example, but I think he already spearheaded some of these in the sense that where the Grey State Masjid that was opposite the building that that the IPCI, it took many people there to, of course, people were not Muslims, to expose them, first of all, to the house of Muslim community. That is the where we make salah, where we basically beseech the Almighty's guidance. And of course, that sacred space is open up to those who basically don't belong to this community. And this in itself helped people to be educated, to be informed, to dispel the myths that they had about Muslim community. So the efforts that are being made by our young brother in Durban and other areas, I think these should be commended because this is the type of opportunities that we need to reach out. In other words, open our doors that have been seen to be sacred, but also bearing in mind historically, when we look at the lives of the Prophet ﷺ, the masjid itself was an open space. It was not a restricted space as we sometimes have it theologically understood to be. It was very much an open space where dialogue took place, where interaction took place, where serious issues were discussed about the future of the Muslim community. So, in the same manner, we should basically do that. And I think coming back to Tuan Guru's space was also an open one. It wasn't a closed one. It was not a restricted one, but a very open one. And I think that in itself and of course, apart from his own persona, in terms of the way he carried himself, the way he taught others, the way he educated others, all of these should be part of that package, a heritage package, so to speak, to try and fully grasp and understand how these people in difficult times managed to keep the flag of Islam alive. They demonstrated that in a very forceful manner, despite the restrictions that they've had during the colonial period. And of course, we experienced that during the apartheid period. But interestingly, despite these restrictions, our Muslim individuals, organizations, structures were able to survive and demonstrate that they were resilient, that they could contribute in a very effective and meaningful way. So today, our generation are able to derive benefits from those, and we should be using that opportunity to build on. So whenever it comes to Heritage Month, or the day more specifically tomorrow, I think it should not be seen as a holiday, but as a seen as an opportunity to publicize, to disseminate, to inform others about who Muslims are, what their forebears have done, how what they have built, how we're building upon what they have left, and how we would like to see the future being in a very dynamic environment in which Muslims also should be seen as part of that broader South African identity. So, as Muslims, we are not don't work in isolation or in silos. We work alongside others, and so doing so, we need to reflect our Muslimness as best we can, whether we work in the agricultural arena, whether we work in a building trade, whether we work in a university, our Muslimness need to be expressed in all of those environments as best as we can to showcase what Islam is all about. And this is where we are when we talk about da'wah. Da'wah need not necessarily be under a banner of the Islamic Da'wah group or whatever the case may be. It should be more in terms of how we, you and I and others, interact with other communities that are not Muslim, and that in itself is what should make an impression upon those who interact with us. They must not see me as Muhammad Harun or the lineage comes from. No, you must see at how I display, how I respect, how I tolerate, how I accept the other, not cut ourselves off from the other, but open up our doors and warmly welcome them into our homes, and of course sharing what we have with them. And I think that sharing part, and this is where we differ from others such as the Zionists who massacre others. Instead of welcoming others, they close off the doors, and then they do atrocities that should not be. So you and I as Muslims, we do not do so. We do not identify with those acts, and therefore we should display the best of manners that, of course, is captured in whom? In the life of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So we need to show the uswa hasana, the best of exemplary characteristics in our lives. Of course, despite our imperfections, you and I, all of us are imperfect. Even our forebears who were around, who inspired us, they also had the imperfections. But despite those imperfections, they demonstrate in a very tangible way what it meant to be Muslim in those circumstances, what it meant to leave legacies that you and I are able to basically derive much benefit from.
Subhanallah. Let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we will continue our discussion with Professor Muhammed Haron. He is also the senior researcher at Al-Jama'ah. We will continue right after the ad break.
Services from an award-winning firm? Look no further than the Belmont Mayer Group, your gateway to unparalleled investment and wealth management. At Belmont Mayer, we believe in the art of wealth creation, a meticulous process fueled by our unwavering commitment to excellence. With a focus on providing elite alternative investments and quality advice, we also pride ourselves on maximizing value for our esteemed investors, as seen through our consistent outperformance. Your financial success is our top priority. Join us at Belmont Mayer and experience the difference firsthand. Ready to embark on a journey of greatness? Contact us today. Reach out to the Belmont Mayer Group on 078 786 1698. Call or WhatsApp or email us at info@belmontmayer.com. Elevate your financial future with Belmont Mayer, where every detail matters.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Make a conscious choice. Sip for change and support Palestine Drinks Africa. With every can, you help end the genocide and stand in solidarity with Palestine. Choose between our original or sugar-free options available in the case of 24. Every sip is a step towards justice. Every purchase a powerful message of unity and support for the Palestinian cause. Contact 082 888 1440 or 082 7739 556 today and be part of the change. Palestine Drinks Africa. Sip for change. Liberty for everyone.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. It's exactly 12:49. My guest is Professor Muhammed Haron. He's a senior researcher at Al-Jama'ah and also the son of the late Imam Harun. So your father too were one of those torchbearers in our community. You mentioned Ahmed Didat. Then going further back in history, we have Bachapir in Natal, who his life's work was to keep Islam alive. And then we have many other contemporary scholars as well. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them all the highest stages in Jannah, including your dear departed father. Back in the day and currently as well, there's still a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment globally. Is Heritage Day, or should we just not confine it to Heritage Day? What do we as a collective do to dispel all of those anti-Muslim sentiments against us as a community, against us as a people? I mean, apartheid Israel has created us as being the other, almost not human, not fit to live. And I guess here is an opportunity for us to showcase ourselves as true humane people, as true humane human beings.
Mm. No, I think, I mean, there are a few points I would like to pick up here. Let's just, I mean, you mentioned Bad Shapir. How many of our, members of our community really understand and know Bad Shapir? And this is why we need to give further life to these individuals. Of course, in a sense, when we talk about giving further life, it's like sadaqatul jariyah that we speak about. In other words, whatever they did in terms of the good works that they've done, they reap the benefit in the year after in terms of us building upon those. So when we think about Bad Shapir and so many others, I think there's just a great amount to basically say and to underscore that their contribution was tangible, was rich, was impactful, and so we keep them. We acknowledge their contribution and we keep them in our mind and, of course, in our du'as. In terms of my father, of course, he himself had laid foundations to a certain degree, but also added his particular story to a number of other stories as such, giving it a richer understanding of how the early Muslim communities had played their role, had helped to shape our ideas, had contributed in the way we think and understand and appreciate our position, specifically as a Muslim minority in a secular environment. And of course, striking that balance, our contemporary community, are sometimes in some ways are struggling with those for various reasons. But that said, I think, and coming to the point that you raised about Islamophobia, let's look at it from three angles. One is that being in a Muslim minority, we as such understand what it basically means to live with others who do not and who have not known what Islam is all about. So what is our duty? And this is the second part, is that we need to interact with them, share with them our culture, our understanding of religion, the application of religion, so that they can appreciate that we understand it somewhat rather qualitatively different from them. And in that way, I think that needs to be appreciated. And the third part to it is that I think through our interaction, we need to help and disarm those Islamophobes. I mean, we have seen there are a number of individuals who came from non-Muslim homes, and as they got to understand and appreciate what Islam is, of course, they were fed with information that were anti-Islam. As they grew accustomed and adjusted to the new thinking, they realized, but this is also their home. So they switched from whether they were of Jewish extraction or Christian or whichever denomination background they came from, they entered into Islam. Let's look at our literally thousands now of African Muslim brothers and sisters who have entered in Islam. How do they do so? Because they realize that Islam itself is an extension of their Ubuntu home. In other words, the Ubuntu philosophy itself is embedded within Islamic teachings, and as a result, they could see the synergy, the connection. So when it comes to these Islamophobes, I think all our generations, say all our generations, those in the past, those in the present, those to come, will always encounter these Islamophobes. It is just a challenge that we have to deal with and face with. And when you look at people like Dr. Suleiman and the gift of the givers, I mean, I'm using him as an example just to underscore the fact that he does not go out and say he's a Muslim, but they all know that he's Muslim. They all know that he's so embedded in Islam that whatever he's doing is because of Islam, because of the teacher it had. And I think they all seem to appreciate the contribution, the qualitative contribution that he has been bringing to the communities. And I think that in itself is a da'wah lesson that is not written, in terms of da'wah, but he is doing work that you and I just continue to admire. And I think we feel proud. Whether you and I disagree with some of his methods or understanding, that's immaterial. It is the work he does. And I think that is how we will build on that heritage, that legacy that you and I need to draw from. And we here concerned with the future generations, because we are challenged by artificial intelligence, and with fake news, with media reports, and of course the media is literally controlled by whom? Even the AI platforms are controlled by whom? By the Zionists. So they are the ones that push the narrative. But despite that negative narrative, Muslim identity always seems to come up on top. And that is something they can't seem to suppress. That's something they can't seem to push into a corner, because at different levels, whether in engineering, whether it is in the building industry, whether it's in the agricultural sector, Muslims have made their little mark in predominantly non-Muslim like ours, like in Australia, like in America, like in Europe, because Muslims have managed to find themselves and to latch onto their identity. And that in itself, from my understanding, is a heritage that we cannot ignore. It's a contribution that we cannot overlook. It's a legacy that will basically be around time immemorial.
Amin.
How
Amin.
many Islamophobes there are, but they won't be able to shoot that down.
Absolutely. And I think we as Muslims in South Africa have lots to celebrate, have lots to be proud of, and lots to hand out down to our future generations, lest they forget that we have very, very strong roots, just by the mere mention of a handful of giants that you've mentioned, Muslim giants that you've mentioned in the course of the interview. We do have to wrap up now, and I'd like to just ask you this final question. Do you think that we in South Africa today are more inclusive in how we celebrate and recognize the contribution of minority communities including us as Muslims?
Well, I think we have. I mean, your platform, Salam Media. Who did you sort of ask to be on board? Not just Muslim voices. You asked, people from different backgrounds, and that in itself is an open pathway for inviting people to share their thoughts. We're not telling them to become Muslim or to be on the platform. We're basically asking them to share their ideas about life in South Africa, about how they interpret certain developments. So in that way, I think that door has been, and our inclusiveness is reflected in this. So all our community radio stations have demonstrated, whether we agree with, again, as we say, with some of the radio stations, not immaterial of that, they have made an impact. In addition to that, our communities, wherever they live, wherever they reside, they have demonstrated that in a very, in a very rich way as well. I mean, their neighbors, the masjids that are there. When we celebrate Eid, we don't close the door, but open the door to basically ask others also to celebrate with us. So all of these are, of course, not in a perfect way, but in a way to say that we are here, we are part of a nation, we are part of the extended community that we are here, but our doors are never closed. We basically adopt an inclusive approach so that at least others can experience what we experience within the House of Islam. And I think that's essentially what we need to do. And that's an example based on the Prophet's example, have an open door so that the generations to come, the other communities to come, can say, but this is how we see Muslims have basically interacted with our forebears, and we want to follow in the same way. And if, of course, they wish, they enter into Islam, as the Almighty basically says that, of course, let them, enter into Islam, in Fawaja, in sort of in throngs, in numbers, and that is what will happen. But if we remain close, then we cannot expect others to understand who we are, to appreciate who we are, to also really see us as a part of them and not us as apart from them.
Mhm. Wonderful talking with you. A wonderful Heritage Day tomorrow. It is an opportunity for us as a collective to go out and showcase ourselves and show the world who we are. Just by the personalities that we've mentioned, we know that Muslims are recognized widely, not only in South Africa, but all around the world. Thank you so very much for your insights. Lovely
You're
talking with
welcome.
you once again. Go well and keep us in your du'as.
It's a pleasure. And Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. And that then brings me to the end of the show for today. Thank you for watching and listening. Till Monday morning on News and Views with me, Julie Ali. Take care and Khuda Hafiz.